Travis, ready? Okay, I'd like to call the September meeting of the Shenandoah County School Board to order at 6:30 PM. Ms. Shepherd, do you have a recommendation to go into closed session, please?
I do. I recommend the School Board of Shenandoah County convene a closed meeting under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act in order to discuss and consider several personnel matters involving the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, discipline, or resignation of several employees of Shenandoah County Public Schools under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A14.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to that effect, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Shenandoah County School Board convene a closed meeting under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act in order to discuss and consider several personnel matters involving the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, discipline, or resignation under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A14.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Barlow. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gutschall. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, and we will reconvene at 7 PM. I'd like to welcome you to our September school board meeting. Do I hear a motion to reconvene in open session, please?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Barlow. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Roots. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? The motion passes. The Shenandoah County School Board hereby certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting in which this certification resolution applies. And second, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening in closed meeting were heard, discussed, and considered by the Shenandoah County School Board. Each member responds, "I so certify," when called by the clerk.
Ms. Walsh,
I so certify.
Mr. Gutschall,
I so certify.
Mr. Barlow,
I so certify.
Ms. Rutz,
I so certify.
Mr. Keller,
I so certify.
Mr. Helsley.
I so certified. Thank you. Ms. Walsh will have the invocation.
Please stand for the invocation. We gather here today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Cindy. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Gutschall. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Second by Ms. Roots. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The agenda is approved. Next, we have recognition. Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you. Tonight we have our FCCLA state winners from the summer with us. Will Miss Melissa Foltz get up and introduce our state FCCLA winner?
Ms. Shepherd, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I've been up here many times to recognize state winners, but actually this time we are recognizing a national winner. So this is my first time to be standing before you and to have the honor to do this. I'm very, very proud of this young lady and our advisor. We got off to a shaky start as we traveled to San Diego with flights being canceled, so Ms. Heiserman had to scramble for that. But judging from the pictures on Twitter, they had a fantastic time, and some of us came back with COVID, but we survived that as well. But I'm very, very proud of Ms. Heiserman and our students, and I'm very proud to introduce Ms. Heather Heiserman, the FCCLA advisor at Strasburg High School.
Those flight changes happened 16 hours before we left. And I was the only one that came back with COVID, so that was good. Good evening, and thank you so much for giving us a few moments to recognize Kerrigan Balzerman. She's currently a junior at Strasburg High School. She placed first in her STAR event at our FCCLA state conference, which was in April in Virginia Beach. If you place first or second, you have the opportunity to go on to our national level, which happened to be in San Diego, California, and that's in July. And so she was able to compete in hospitality, recreation, and tourism. This event, it's kind of a really neat event. She had to create a fictional hospitality business. And Kerrigan, although she is very involved in FCCLA, she's also very involved in FFA and loves agriculture. And so we tied those two things together, and she created a bed and breakfast, unique in the sense that it would provide you an opportunity to spend a day on the farm. And And so you'd get the people that were going to pay to be there to work. It was a great concept, really. And so she really, dove in, did so much work so quickly. She had to research existing businesses. She did job descriptions for all the people that would work with her or work for her. She had to figure out what services and amenities she would offer on her farm. And then she had to have a portfolio and put it all together and do a 10-minute oral presentation. And so with that, in San Diego, she was awarded the top winner in her category nationally. And we've had national winners get gold, but until this year, we've never known where they rank compared to all the others. And so she was our first winner as a first place winner at the national level. So super proud of her. And I just want to thank you all for allowing kids to take part in these things. Much as Ms. Holt said, this experience is not just about going to our conference. It's the wonderful and the woes of traveling. And of course, I think although Kerrigan is well traveled, a lot of kids get their first flight. Many of us got our first train ride, which was super cool. They get to put their toes in the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and then, there's always the daily thing of managing money, where everything costs more in California. So thank you for that, and of course, I'm very, very proud to recognize Kerrigan.
So, and if those of you had the opportunity to go to the fair on Thursday, Kerrigan's name was mentioned frequently during, was it the steer show? Heifer show, yeah.
She has quite a list of accomplishments. Well-rounded.
Congratulations.
Our next recognition is to recognize our community partners who were so generous this year. We appreciate their caring and their thoughtfulness. I'm going to recognize the United Way, Jennifer Hall, who's the Senior Director of Community Investment, Valley Assistant Network. I am going to recognize Just Because, Karen Casperson, Shenandoah County Chamber of Commerce, Sharon Baroncelli, and Georgia's Billy Joe Espinino. So,
Billy Joe might be walking in any second now. Maybe. She's here with us in spirit. Thank you so much. We were delighted to be a part of a really cool event here in Shenandoah County. We held a Tools for Teachers collection drive, and we weren't quite sure what was going to make of it, but the idea was to be able to support our educators here in Shenandoah County. And let me tell you, Shenandoah County came out in a big way because we collected over $6,000 worth of supplies for our local teachers. Yay! Because of the generosity of this wonderful community. And this was all actually the idea of the HR staff at Georgia's. And then we partnered with Sharon, and she helped us get the word out. And it really was because, we know that our teachers work so hard every single day, and our administrators, and we just value what they do all the time. And I tell you, we were out there at the Walmart, collecting items, and the community was just so generous, and they give us $1 and $5 at a time, and all those tiny amounts of money really added up to also $1,300. And so we divided that by the 10 schools, and so we have checks for $130 checks for each of the 10 schools to be able to use to purchase other supplies that the teachers might need. But hopefully when the teachers, we're going to deliver the big boxes of stuff. Let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff, mounds and mounds of stuff. But when we deliver the stuff, we just hope that all the teachers and the administrators will just remember that the community really cares about them and feel supported and appreciated, because this is a very difficult time still. And so we also just want to thank everybody that did donate. So These are for the teachers, or the administrators that are here.
Yeah. So we can go ahead and recognize the principals because they're all here. So if you want to stand right there. Gary Painter from Sandy Hook Elementary School. Robin Schrum from W.W. Robinson. Tiffany Utz from Honey Run. And if you guys will stay up here. Yeah. Honey Run. Holly Rusher from Signal Knob Middle School. Ryan Lingle from Peter Muhlenberg. Melanie Hoover, Assistant Principal at North Fork Middle School. Melissa Foltz, Principal at Strasburg High School. Derek Rittenauer, Assistant Principal at Central High School. Mike Dorman, Principal at Mountain View High School. And Connie Pangle, Principal at Triplet Tech. So thank you for your generosity to Shenandoah County Public Schools. And we have one additional recognition. We would like to recognize the Shenandoah County Sheriff's Office with their efforts in getting donations for our teachers. We would like to thank Sheriff Carter, Lieutenant Malk, and our SROs. So if you'll come forward.
Doesn't look like anybody's going to come up with us. Just Whitney and I. We're just, well, we've been doing this now. We started a backpack drive, I guess it's been about 11 or 12 years ago. I guess this mic's on. Can you all hear me? And I hate to say it, it's a shame we have to do this, but we do this. This year we helped over 800 kids in Shenandoah County. I can't, and I know Whitney would say the same thing, neither one of us can stand here today and tell you that it's all because of us. It's really because of people and the community coming together and helping us. We do this each year and help hundreds of kids and hundreds of families over the last several years. We have had some partners that have helped us along the way, DSS, the Shenandoah County Public School System, Chantel, and there's too many others, Northern Virginia Daily, there's Walmart, so many others that have helped us along, and all the families and shoppers that are there that day that give of their time and give of their money and buy school supplies for kids. And anything extra, we try to collect it for the schools because we always know that there's going to come someone up after the event throughout the year that either moves to the county or comes on hard times, and we have help for them as well. So it's really just something that we do and we'll continue to do, and appreciate you all recognizing us, but really it's not about us, it's about everyone else that's a part of this. So thank you very much.
And we really appreciate the donations. I know our teachers do as well as the administrative staff. So thank you so much.
It's our staff they're busy just like everyone else. There are a few school resource officers here with us tonight, but they are all engaged in this, and so are other members of our agency as well. So I want to thank them all for their support as well. So thank you.
And you were out there during the heat wave. Yeah.
So Ms. Sager's going to get a picture of us, so the SROs will need to come up front so they can get their picture taken as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, since I know I'm putting you on the spot, can you briefly say how did the drills went? I mean, you gave a presentation about school safety, and then I think the drill was following that. Just roughly, were you?
They went very well. Got a lot of new staff. You have some new administrators within your schools. We decided to take a position that we were going to do this in phases this summer. I can't say enough regarding Whitney and Coulter Stroop organizing the event, and also the campuses and the principals coming together and supporting these trainings, because we had one on each campus. And the plan is to try to come up with a larger exercise over the winter break. I thought it was excellent training, and I think those that were a party to it thought it was excellent training, so yes.
Okay, and also I think we're going to do recommendations about the elementary schools, about additional safety. We're going to pursue that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks for your recommendation. Okay, 2.6, the Shenandoah County School Board welcomes public comment during regular meetings and public meetings. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting or hearing. Each speaker may speak up to 3 minutes. The board generally allows up to 60 for public comments on agenda and non-agenda items at the beginning of the meeting. If there is a large number of speakers, the board may limit the total time for comments. All comments should address a matter related to Shenandoah County Public Schools. The school board will not hear public comments that involve a complaint about an individual staff member, a personnel action, a student disciplinary matter, a complaint about an individual student, or pending litigation. The school board expects that each speaker be courteous, modeling for our students how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. Speakers will address the comments to the entire school board and not to one individual school board member, to the superintendent, to a staff member, nor to the audience. Speakers will not engage in personal attacks. Speakers may sign up, and you did sign up as you entered the auditorium here for our meeting, and we will begin with Mr. John Clem.
John Clem, east of Edinburgh is where I live. At last month's open session, board members stressed the importance of support for teachers. I would like to add that it is also very important to support our school resource officers. To that end, I myself would like to see more community involvement in school security. I would like to see a pool of volunteers, community volunteers formed who would assist school resource officers in monitoring perimeter doors, ensuring that all doors are always kept secured, that doors are never blocked open with stone sticks, pieces of pipe. School volunteers could also assist school resource officers in monitoring the school campus for persons who appear to be out of place, and then reporting to the school resource officer. I do not suggest that volunteers can do a more competent job than the administration or police officials. I do suggest that school security is everyone's job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Next speaker is Carissa Jenkins.
Good evening. I'm Carissa Jenkins, the Central High School librarian. At the last school board session, an excerpt from A Court of Mist and Fury was shared. I went through Central's collection, and we don't have it or any other books from the series A Court of Thorns and Roses. I did a little digging to find out where the miscommunication may be. Destiny, the Shenandoah County Library Management System, shows many books that can be purchased when you look under the Collections tab, not just those owned by Central High School or even Shenandoah County Public Schools. Collections suggest book recommendations based on genre, author, and subject. This feature helps librarians and students select possible books for future orders. Author Sarah J. Maas originally marketed her book in the new adult genre, targeting 18 to 25-year-olds. Because the new adult genre is an emerging idea, few books are published in this category. Multiple reviews say the series straddles the line between young adult and adult fiction fantasy. As the series progresses, all reviews agree that the storyline does get racier. Because of this, I agree that A Court of Mist and Fury would not have been a good fit for our high school library. After the miscommunication concerning books in our current collection, I want to be sure that students, parents, and our community know how to use Destiny to see what books we have in our physical collection. Parents and guardians who wish to see what their child has checked out from the library can easily access this information with their child's Chromebook username and lunch number. I'm in the process of creating video tutorials showing how to access this information using Destiny so the program can be used to its fullest potential. The best education for students comes from parents, the school board, administrators, teachers, and librarians working together. We all have the same goal, to do what's best for our students. I hope for more open communication and collaboration between us all. Come visit us at Central's library. I'd love to show you around and have more opportunities to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Charles Street.
Good evening. I hope everyone is well. Elected school board members, Superintendent Melody Shepard, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I hope that the first few weeks of school are going well, or as well as can be expected. First, I'd like to recognize another fallen Stonewall Jackson graduate, Tammy Jones, taken too early from this earth. Second, I would like to thank the school board for allowing the students who had projects at the fair time to work with their animals and the other students to enjoy the fair. Thank you very much. Third, I have recently learned some awkward information that I just found out recently. There's no policy yet. That in my opinion, I have questions about. How is it that in order to check out a student from school, you need parental consent? But if a student, for some reason, feels that they are, for instance, Bob, who wants to be Betty, there is no parental consent needed as of yet. I feel as a parent that I would need to be notified if that occurs. If you say 20 years later, Bob wants his transcripts from school, and there isn't a Bob in his junior or senior year, only a Betty, how will this be clarified? Hanover County has adopted guidelines and policies recently that address this concept. The proposal outlines are, just briefly, number one, a statement from a student. Number two, signed statements from students, physicians, therapists, or counselor. 3, statements from the parents or guardian. 4, students' disciplinary or criminal record. Number 5, other related information. If this policy was in place, then maybe the things that happened in Loudoun County would have not happened. Fourth, it disturbs me, and I'm not perfect, that students have little or some lack of fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Some school students lack penmanship in the process in which sentences and paragraphs are arranged. And some will print their names and not sign their names. Once again, I'm far from perfect. Another thing, a lot of students that work at Food Line, and I'm surprised of how many cannot make change. For instance, if my bill was $30.25 and I gave them $51, they usually hand me back the $1 and say it's not needed. I tell them to ring in the $51 and see what happens. Then I explain why I gave them $51 in order to receive $20.75. That way you don't give all your 1s and 5s and 10s out. I tell them sometimes the older generation will do things just to make you think or figure basic fundamentals out on your own. But of course, I have to get my daughter or son to set up my phone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Stephen Heischman.
Good evening, members of the school board. Ms. Shepherd, thank you for allowing me to speak just a minute this evening. I wanted to say just a couple words on the WRE program. Last week at the fair, the WRE had a booth set up in the exhibit building, and I was asked to man that booth one evening, in particular on Friday evening. And it's important for me to let you all know that it was a very, very positive experience. I probably in 2 hours spoke to at least 30 different people, different age brackets. Some of them, a lot of them had students in the county school somewhere in the county, gave out some brochures and candy and such, and also there were parents there that homeschooled their kids, that sent their kids to private schools right here in the county. But every single one of them had something positive to say about the WRE program and Jesus finally getting the opportunity to get back into the school system. And it is because of this school board and the courageous decisions that you all made the first of this year that made all of that possible, that will possibly reach the heart. If this program reaches the heart of just one individual, the mission is accomplished. And I wanted to thank you all for making the decision to bring the program in Shenandoah County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do anyone else here would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay. Moving on. I will ask a motion to approve the consent agenda that's given to you.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Gutschall. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Roots. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, on to instructional agenda. Ms. Shepherd, the opening on the new school year, 22-23.
All right, so we've had a great back to school. We're about a month in, and I have some pictures and some information I would like to share with you about our beginning back to school 2022. So we started our 2022-2023 school year August 4th, 5th, and 8th with welcoming our new staff to orientation. You'll see a few pictures there of some of the activities at Central High School this year. We, at this time, we welcome 52 new teachers to Shenandoah County Public Schools. A few short days later, on August the 9th, we welcomed all of our staff back for the school year. Daphne Folson kicked off the year with our convocation message on building relationships and knowing your impact on students. That was on August the 9th. We honored our 2021-2022 teachers, support staff, and new teachers of the year. This was a great opportunity for us to get together and renew our friendships and our relationships for those teachers that may not teach on the same campus or in the same school that we do. This school year, we are implementing a new 5th grade history curriculum. Over the last years, our instruction department, along with our teachers and instructional technology resource coordinators, our coaches, And many community organizations and community members created a new fifth grade curriculum based on the history of Shenandoah County. So this was during our professional days before school started. These images highlight the training that our fifth grade teachers received during that week to teach the new curriculum. And we would not have been able to do this without the help of and support of our community partners, so we would like to thank them. And listed here are a few of those. And then on August the 16th, we had our first day of school. Our teachers, our staff, and our students were all excited to be back in school. And then shortly after school started, we had the Shenandoah County Fair. So our students who participated in the fair were counted present and were given wireless internet access to keep up with their work. We would like to thank the students who recorded videos that we showed to our elementary school students to encourage them for them to understand what happens at the fair. Those students were Lindsay, Kennedy, Olivia, Kerrigan, Maggie, Morgan, and Maggie, and Kerrigan was here this evening, so she was part of those videos. All of our fifth graders took a field trip to the fair. We did a survey, we did an informal survey, and about 25% of our fifth grade students, this was their first opportunity to visit the fair. So that was great. We will look at the work that we did this year and expand on that for future years. In the survey, it asked what the students liked about the fair. They liked the animals. They liked, they didn't get funnel cakes, but they liked the smell of the funnel cakes. And they liked interacting with the people that were at the fair. And I would be remiss if we did not thank the fair for accommodating our students during, they took their field trips on Tuesday. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday and Wednesday. And they allowed our students to enter the fair free of charge. So we are so grateful for them for doing that. And then this year, we are offering one free breakfast and one free lunch for all of our students. It's part of the community eligibility provision program, which we will be able to participate in for the next 5 years, so this year and the next 4 years. The second bullet, you'll see that our food service served 17,202 breakfasts and 33,051 lunches in August, which was an average of 1,434 breakfasts and 2,754 lunches. So breakfasts were down slightly, about 42 breakfasts from the previous year, less. And then our lunch count has increased almost 500 meals per day. And then just a little note on quarantine. VDH no longer recommends quarantine unless symptomatic. So more students are able to come to school in person, and we're glad of it. And then finally, here are our numbers for this snapshot was taken on September the 6th. So it is a decrease in the number of students from previous year at the same time. We do have a smaller kindergarten class, and we had a large senior class graduating last year, so our number of seniors is less this year. That accounts for most of the decline in enrollment. But then I also looked at birth rate, and 5 years ago, birth rate was down for this particular kindergarten cohort. It should increase next year. decrease slightly the following year, but then we're going to see an upsurge in 2025, 2026 with increased births at that time. Be happy to answer any questions. We're so glad to have our students and our staff back in school. It's been a great school year up until this point. So, and we're looking for a positive school year the remaining of the year, the remainder.
Questions for Ms. Shepherd about the opening?
Do you know how many students participated in the fair? Do you have any idea?
Yes, a little over 100. I think it may be 125. I can get you the exact
No,
number.
that's fine. I just wanted an idea. Thank you.
And no students were count present.
Yes, that's correct.
And when the fifth graders went to the fair, did they pack their lunch from their home schools, or
They didn't go during lunch, so they it was fun for the students because they went through the exhibit hall and then they went through the barns, and the vendors would see them come through, and some of them ended up getting Strites donuts. The Strites handed out donuts, and they ended up with several things that they took back to school with them just because the vendors were glad to see them there. So.
any other questions?
All right, thank you. Next up is Mr. Hensley and Ms. Proctor.
They will speak on accreditation of our schools 22 to 23.
Good evening. Every year about this time, we give you an update on our accreditation. We start receiving our numbers in late July, and they start changing a little bit as we get into September. Usually by the end of September, we usually have the final numbers from the State Department. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through the preliminary data that we have for our schools, explain accreditation a little bit so you can see what that looks for our school years. So we're going to go through the accreditation status. We're going to look at VDOE and their school accreditation, how they rank the schools, and then we're going to look at the overview of our schools with the performance. And then we're going to follow up at the very end with Discover and Grow. What are we seeing in our data? What are we going to do to help moving forward? So the first thing is accreditation status. This year, you notice that in the 22-23 school year, they're using the 17-18, the 18-19, the 21-22 school year data to come up with the results. The Career and College Readiness Indicator, you'll see it's not going to be evaluated in 2022 for the accreditation, but you'll see where we are, and we know that we need some things that we need to work on to have. And then the last
Okay. Got it. Sorry about that, Cheryl. So they're not on a typical, like we're used to, like a score of 400 was passing. That's not how this is done. And it is also, they use that score in comparison with their end of the year score with the SOL to decide if they've made growth. And student performance will be considered along with SOL scores, like I just said, to determine that growth. That's just repeated myself. All right.
So as we get into the VDOE performance levels, you're going to see in a second on our reports, you're going to see green indicators, yellow indicators, and red indicators. And so when you see those, it's going to be level 1, level 2, and level 3. So let's talk a little bit about each level. At level 1, they're at standard or they're above standard. And what does that really mean? It means that they're meeting the standard or that indicator, but they're also making sufficient improvement towards where they need to be, especially if they're in level 2, so they're moving forward. So action and intervention on that means that every year schools have an improvement plan that they create. No matter if they're level 1 or level 3, they create improvement for their school. So they review their data, they revise it. So on level 1, they basically monitor the performance, they watch their data, and they update anything that they need to in their plan to make the improvements that they need to make. And I'll show you in a little bit, when you're hitting level 1, why you would still need to make improvements. Level 2 is that you're getting near the standard or you're improving. So that means you may be moving out of level 3, moving forward. But the big difference here is that you have to revise that multi-year plan to improve, and it has to be based on those indicators that we're seeing in the data. Level 3, this is where you don't want to be, right? But if you are there, it means you're below the state standards, you're not making the progress that you need to make. You're going to have to implement a state-approved plan. So here in September the 14th, actually, at the school division, a group of us will be going through academic review training with the state. So we'll go through that, and then we have some administrators that will also be going to Richmond to also do the same training. What we do that's important here is that the state will come in, or we'll run it ourselves, and we look at things such as lesson plans to see if there's a rubric that we follow from the state, and it walks us through that you have to review lesson plans, evaluations, and you're looking for specific things inside of those documents. And if you can't find those indicators inside those documents, you stop and you create a plan to make sure that you put in place for your school things that have those indicators inside of them. So when we think about our federal side,
so we have two measures that we're looked at. We're looked at federally, and then we're also looked at state level. So this is our federal accountability, and keep in mind, federal is the first time a student takes an SOL test. This does not take into consideration any expedited retakes or any growth. So this is just first time takes in our scores. So you can see it compares. The red is Virginia, the blue is Shenandoah County, and it has 2021 and then 21-22. So you can see that in some areas we're right with the state average, and in other places we have some work to do. Even when we're with the state average, we still have some work to do. So just to point that out. And also, history and writing results are not reported because the previous year we were able to do local assessments in history and writing, so we don't have anything to compare to there because the state didn't collect any historical data on that.
so when we look at the state accreditation, these are, again, remember, these are not the final numbers, but this is laid out by each school in our division from elementary to high school. You'll notice that they're in color. So if it's level 1, it's green. Level 2, it's yellow. If you look at a school that has, let's say, Sandy Hook, for example, they're level 1. You can see their growth score is in there. It's different from the scores that you may see of what Jennifer just showed you. But there are areas in there that are yellow. So those are definitely students with disabilities. We would want to make sure that we're creating a plan to make sure that we're providing instruction that's really geared to help our students with disabilities if they're not performing as well as others. So this is English overall, and it has English for all 3 years, and then it has the achievement gap at the bottom that has the levels. As you can see, we have a good many that are at level 1. We do have some in level 2, and we do have a couple at level 3. They will be the ones that will do the academic reviews. And math, and for some reason the color didn't show up on a lot of them, but the majority of math is green. We've done really well. So we know in English there are some things that we need to look at and some plans that we need to put in place in English to move forward. Math, we seem to be doing well, but we're not content with that. We want to continue to improve also in math. This is where it gets a little different. So if you notice, history, we did okay. There are some places that we didn't do so well. So we have to go back and we need to look at the curriculum frameworks and look at the materials that we're putting in front of students and how we're teaching it to bring those scores up. Science across the board is definitely an area that we need to improve. We need to focus on that. We've done a lot of work this year with schedules, of providing longer schedules. You'll see that later at the middle school. There's longer schedules, and also making sure there's equity between the different subjects so that one subject may not be getting 30 minutes when another subject gets 120 minutes. Chronic absentee, that's another issue coming out of COVID that we know. Our principals are aware of that, and they have plans right now starting on that also.
Can you go back?
Sure.
What is the percentage there for absenteeism? What does that mean? Like, Strasburg High School is 41.51.
So that means 41.5% of their students, 9 through 12, were chronically absent. It means they missed 18 or more days of school. But remember, we asked kids to stay home whenever they had COVID. So, that probably played a bit into it. But I think if you look historically, Strasburg High School may have had an issue with chronic absenteeism prior to 2021-22.
And we have those numbers to play off that?
Yes.
But yeah, I would think COVID would play a big part in these.
It did, because our elementary schools typically are below 15%, and you see where they're at now, 36, 32, 34.
So I just pulled the data back together to what does that look like by school. So the accreditation status, all schools are accredited. We have one school, Peter Millenberg, that's it appears right now is going to be accredited with conditions. So that gives us an indication of where we are. We also know that if we're at level 2 monitoring, we have some things that we need to be working on there. In level 3, there are some things that we'll be diving in specifically, doing those academic reviews where we actually take teachers' lesson plans. The principal will collect in that area, let's say it's science, we'll collect lesson plans in that area. We'll also collect evaluations. And it's really good if you can get a lesson plan that matches an evaluation to see the lesson that was carried out and how that teacher received their evaluation during that time. So the last slide shows a lot of dismal things. I wanted to make sure that I showed you this. CIP does a great job of providing data for us. And this is for Shenandoah County since 2015 of all SOL tests. And they do this for all the divisions in the state as a comparison so that we can see where we are and how we rank. If you notice, we're ranking 85th right now, and that's the lowest that we've been since 2015, which is a good thing. So we did do well. I did ask for a comparison of all divisions to see what that looks like. This year with our growth, we ranked in the top 14 with growth. The closest person in the surrounding divisions around us was 49th in that. So we did a great job coming out of COVID, moving forward, but our work's definitely not done. And this is a celebration, but we need to keep moving forward because we definitely don't want to stop here.
Okay, so what are we going to do to help work on these problems? One of the major things that we did this year was some adjustments in our master schedules. At the middle school, we moved to more approximately a 90-minute block for all subject areas. And at the elementary, we moved to having more extended planning time for our elementary teachers. And then also we're pushing our paraprofessionals and our resource teachers into the classrooms more. Primarily in the past, our paraprofessionals that worked in kindergarten, they might have gone to first and second grade classrooms, but moving forward this year, they're going into all classrooms. All classroom teachers have assistants coming in to help out. So that's a positive change. Master schedule, subject, and time recommendations. As Mr. Hensley talked about earlier, in the past we've had some discrepancies in not all subject areas were getting the devoted time that they should have, and so we've moved forward in asking our principals to make sure their master schedules all have the right time allotted to those subject matters. And we gave them those recommendations, and so far we've seen all of that playing out. Adjustments in course pacing, professional development to support instruction. We've had a lot of PD right before school started. I know we had for the middle school teachers how to teach in the block, what to do with 90 minutes, because some of them aren't used to having kids for that long of a class period. And so what do you do for that time period? So helping that, also working on training our paraprofessionals and what do they do when they go into the classrooms so that they are useful and they're helping students with interventions and that type of thing. Collaborative planning among teachers, administrators, and school board office instructional staff. This has been a big push. This is also part of our continuous school improvement plans that we've talked about with you all in the past, but making sure that we're all planning together. Administrators, it's kind of an all hands on deck approach. Use of reading specialists, interventionists, ITRCs, instructional coaches, all of those people are helping out. Also, targeted resources to support unfinished learning. So this summer we had a much more rich summer school than we've had in the past. So we're going to work on gathering some data to see how those students did when we came back to school this year. Formal and informal assessments to monitor student progress. So we're working on spirals for our math and for our writing. You saw our writing scores. So we're working on spirals that can help teachers kind of formally assess how are we doing. Benchmark data disaggregation, targeted intervention services. So once we give a benchmark, what do we need to go back and do? How can we help teachers? And as I said, our comprehensive need assessment that we did this past summer, each school reviewed their performance data for strengths and weaknesses in all of the subject areas, including attendance and behavior. And then they wrote their CSIPs based on that CNA that each school did with their leadership team. And what questions do you all have for us?
Questions? Brandy.
What does your the growth assessments look like? I mean, they're not SOL tests. There's not really a score. How many questions? I mean,
I think it's approximately about 20 questions, and it's not supposed to take that long. I think it's about an hour, but they're multiple choice. Just like the SOL tests, they're just not as long. Just 20 questions.
All right. I don't know at what point the school system went to 90 minutes. I'll be honest with you, 90 minutes in, say, a history class or of course I love history, but say in science or algebra, since I don't algebra, seems daunting to me. I would check out in the first probably half hour. How do you keep attention spans? How do you, I mean, I would think that long of a time would be a hindrance for a student to sit that long, to be attentive that long, to teach that long. I mean, I would be interested to know what our scores look like prior to a block schedule. My granddaughter is at Legacy. They ditched the block schedule altogether. They went back to 7 periods. So, and I'm curious to see how that works out for them. But 90 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, so what we were talking about earlier, we were given the training. So we did math training where we're doing math groupings so that students, the goal is that students don't sit and listen to a lecture all the time. I agree with you 100%. Everybody checks out. If someone's going to sit there and talk to you the whole time, you're just like, you're gone. I can't take this.
I like how you all feel
Right.
right now.
No, actually, no, I'm paying attention.
So the goal is that their lessons would be differentiated throughout, meaning that they're going to plan to do something, provide a lesson for 10 to 15 minutes, and then they switch and do something with it. So it's constantly changing throughout that 90 minutes. It should feel like the 90-minute block's up, and you're like, where did the 90 minutes go? Because you should be constantly moving and changing. To sit there, it takes a lot. But like, it gives opportunity to do experiments. So you can be teaching about something, and you can get into experiments and do labs and things like that, and have more time to do it. But it's really important on how the teacher plans, and making sure that we give them the skilled background of making sure that they can make those decisions and do what's best for the students that they have in front of them. And that changes from first block to second block. And that's why they're the professionals in the class, and they have to make those adjustments daily with each of those students.
The math workshop, the math PD that we had was like the workshop model that we are used to at the elementary level, but bringing that into the middle school level so that they kind of have rotations that they work through. So they might do, an activity here where they're reviewing some skills, and then they move into another one where they're actually using the skills that they were taught that day in the core lesson. And then they might have also like their IXL they use in the middle school, which is the computer-based programs. They might have like 15 minutes on that.
And that gives them the ability to have different levels of students and to provide different rigor to each one of those levels of students. So you may have a group of high flyers that are moving a lot faster than other students. Well, you can accomplish that when you have these groupings so that all students aren't just held back to where we're at. We can actually excel you during that time.
Thank you.
Definitely recommend a visit to a class. I actually didn't understand how it worked either, but I visited Miss Melissa Williams's class last year. Were you with me? I don't remember what group I was with, but it was interesting to see because what she was doing is what they used to do in second grade. It was what Miss Spiegel did, There were 4 different stations basically set up around the room. She was instructing a very small group of kids. And then some kids were on IXL, others were doing a group project, and I don't remember what the 4th one was. But there were lots of different things going on, and that way she could rotate small groups through her direct instruction.
Dennis?
Well, I want to commend the two of you. The briefings that I've heard the last 6 months have been clear, they've been concise, and they've been really informative. And I have a theory that the sooner and in the greater detail you disclose the bad news, the better off we all are, because we can actually address real shortfalls and figure out how to target them. And that's what I think this allows us to do. And after some time of obfuscation, this is a breath of fresh air. I want to commend you for it and dedicate ourselves to supporting you in doing that and taking that as a positive step and trying to respond to it in positive ways. So I think our goals in achieving performance, academic increases is going to build from precisely this kind of analysis as the root. And you've given us a lot of good methodologies that you're already pursuing that we can follow up on. So I want to thank you for your transparency and your honesty on this, and most of all, your hard work. So thank you for that.
Yes.
This began this summer, obviously, what Jennifer said, when we did our CNA and did our CSIPs. So the principal started that process with us. We started walking them through of how to do that. Then they went back and they got their teams together. They worked on it, and then they created their plan. Once they created their plan, then Jennifer and I have been going through the plan, looking at the plan, and just providing general feedback based on, does this relate to your accreditation? What's the evidence? If you're doing this, what's the evidence coming out of it? So making sure that if we're going to do something, we want to make sure it works. We just don't want to do things to do things. And if we're doing something that's not working, we need to abandon that. So we have to be open and honest with that. If we look at our scores, we're not doing well, let's be open and honest. Let's talk about it. Let's fix those things.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are we still participating in the CIP?
Yes.
That's why we have those rankings that they do. So this is a totally loaded question, and you don't have to answer it, any of you 3. But can you speculate on why other divisions in CIP are having the best years they've ever had, whereas we're struggling in some areas? Wise County's knocking it out of the park. What are they doing differently? I think their parents are a lot more engaged. I remember talking to their superintendent at a VSBA meeting, and but
Do you have any
So,
thoughts?
so total, yeah, theories and total speculation, right? I think one, they've had this data, so they have more experience of looking at it, working with it, and understanding that we're not taking an assessment to see how good our students are doing. We're taking an assessment to evaluate how well we taught something and what we may need to go back and what we may need to change in our curriculum, and they're constantly doing that. So I know when we first started giving it, people wanted to prep for the test. It's not about prepping for the test. We want to know what they know, what are we using that's working, what are we using that's not working, and fix it so that we go through it once and we don't have to go through it multiple times as we move forward. So I think that's one piece. And they've met a lot, and that's why you see more people join in CIP along the way, because one, they get the data. You have to make decisions based on data. It's not what I think or how I felt. The data tells me they either did well or they didn't do well. So they have a lot of meetings that they've been sitting down, having discussions. We're joining in that. I spoke with the principal today, asking, do you think it'd be beneficial for me to go to this training? And I said, I think any training you can go to is going to be beneficial with it because you've never been there for it.
One of the things I'll add to that, oh, this suddenly got louder. One of the things I'll add to that is it's really, when we were in school improvement at W.W. Robinson, it was really, really about that alignment piece, because we all want to interpret the SOL and what it says in our own way, but really getting into that scope and sequence and looking at what the essential knowledge are of the kids and how they have to apply it. And so that lesson planning piece is huge. When we went to common planning time, you could go ask two teachers, do you teach parallel lines? Do you teach parallel lines? One said yes, one said no. Well, are they wrong? Are they right? And the truth was probably somewhere in the middle, and they were both interpreting my question differently. But anyway, so I think it really goes back to that alignment piece.
So another thing is, I could sit here and talk about this all day. When Jennifer was going through this, I was fortunate enough to be the director to go over and meet and go through plannings with them also and give feedback during that time. The one thing that I vividly remember, and I know that she'll remember this, is that she had a very strong teacher that said, it wasn't until I started giving the CIP assessments that I realized I wasn't teaching it to the rigor that I needed to teach it to. So sometimes we create our own assessments that we think may be right, but after we start looking at it and breaking it down, we have that aha moment to say, maybe I should have had more rigor than what I had before. Teacher was doing exactly what she thought was right. She wasn't doing anything wrong. But that helped her in the way that she planned her lessons, the way she carried out her instructional delivery during the class. So I think that all plays into it, and I think that plays into the ones that's been doing this for a while.
Right, and Wise County was the leader, right? Okay, thank you. I was curious because you just see stories about them, and but that is I understand what you're saying. So, thank you.
How many times a year are our teachers testing?
For CIP?
All together.
Huh. Yes.
Well, I mean, I know that some of it's, and I'm guessing state required, and it seems like it just keeps getting piled on and piled on. I mean, I joke that the state probably knows more about kids' schedules and what they know than they probably really rightfully should. But, testing is always something that comes up with teachers that you're always, you can't teach. There's always something else coming up that you have to worry about scheduling. There is a bring your legislator to school, event coming up. Is there something that we need to go to say Ty Gilbert to, or to, somebody else and say, look, you need to see if we can get some of this stuff, eased up. Teachers need to teach. They don't constantly need to be assessed. And students don't, where we're at. It takes time away, yes. I think.
So what I'm going to say is that I don't know the exact number right here, but we have an assessment calendar that we have broken down by grade level all the way through. And what we did is that you'll hear teachers and you'll hear us say it. We feel like we assess the kids a lot. So what we've done over the last 2 years is we went back and said, okay, what assessments are really required and what assessments are we really using? So trying to cut those out as we go. But you're right, legislation does put some things in place that we have to do, that we have to put in place, that we have to do those things. So we've had a critical eye on that, and that's why we have that testing calendar now, so that we can look, and each year we've admitted something out, it seems like each year, as much as we possibly could.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few. About the block schedule, I taught at Muhlenberg, we had 60-minute blocks, and I thought it was very successful. Then I did a long-term sub at North Fork, and they had block schedule. And it was an adjustment for me, but the ladies that I taught had things broken up, and that went well. And of course, so I'm not quite sure on that. I agree with Brandy. It's a long time, but if you break it up in segments, get the kids moving in science to do the experiments or whatever, I thought that was helpful. All right, let's talk about, are the classes heterogeneous group or homogeneous group? Let's take grade 7 at North Fork. I assume it's countywide, but
Oh, yeah, they should be,
maybe
they're
maybe
heterogeneously
that's
grouped.
not a fair question. My point is, well, let's talk about the broader issue. Are we going to offer Algebra 1 on 8th grade countywide?
Yes, we offer Algebra 1 countywide. You have to by state law. So we have standards that we have in place that we look at for students and how they perform.
Okay, do we have a pre-algebra class on grade 7 prior to taking Algebra 1 on grade 8?
Grade 8 is pre-algebra, so grade 8 is pre-algebra. Does that make sense?
That's not an algebra credit for the high school?
So Math 8, what they call Math 8, is actually pre-algebra. That is pre-algebra. So when we look at students that are going to take algebra, we're looking at a student that's going to skip an entire grade level. So what we have is we have a document that maps skills of what's actually taught in 8th grade that's introduced for like geometry, for algebra. So when a student does skip in 8th grade and takes that, we have to make sure that they have the mathematical skills that are strong. We've looked back in the past at our scores of students that skipped and noticed some of our strongest students as they went through math. 2 things have happened. 1, they didn't continue with math. And 2, their SOL performance started performing like other students. So the one thing that we have to make sure is that we look at the skill level of students, and that's why we have multiple things that we look at. And we actually looked at it again today with Ms. Shepard. We were looking at it based on the growth assessment that's given. So we want to make sure that students aren't just skipping information and then they show up in geometry class and now they don't have a background in it because they never had that information. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
That content was never taught, the precursor to it.
I know I taught in the dinosaur era, but I taught pre-algebra grade 7. I mean, they were homogeneous group, and I challenged them. And then they went to Algebra 1 in grade 8, and it was very successful, and then they went to geometry and whatever.
So our math specialist does look at data and provides information to principals at the end of the school year on groups of students that should be clumped together in classes, that you have nice groups that can be pushed and moved forward to.
My fear is if we have an accelerated student in grade 7 in math, and they get done with the assignment or they understand it, and then they are sent outside to do, enrichment activities or whatever, are we really challenge those students that are being sent out?
I'm going to say no. That's the reason why we did our math training this year, to have those math groupings, that you inside of a classroom, that students can be in doing different things and being taught different things as they advance also. So it's not one stand and lecture, get one thing, this is what everybody does. I actually had a parent contact me and say that they were concerned because in the past they may have went and worked on a packet. Well, it's good to know that because we need to know that if a student's going out working on a packet for 30 minutes, that's probably not the best use of that 60-minute block that they had or 70-minute. And when we say block, it's not necessarily 90 minutes. It's close to that. It's in the 80s. It's kind of what works within their schedule.
I heard nationwide, I think I heard this week, that scores in reading are down 7%, 5%, and in math is 7%. So this is not, a Shenandoah County problem. and the pandemic was, part of the problem, whatever. So, I mean, I just saw that in the news, whatever. And then going back to science, which was my love and my passion. The SOLs cover 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I think I've asked this before, and it was changed after I got out, which is 15 years ago, whatever. I mean, that is tough for students or teachers to review that material and when they take the tests.
Yeah.
And usually when I taught, science was one of the highest areas. But that was, not because of me, whatever, but I think we just won SOLs on grade 8. Might be 7, I forget. And I think the 6th grade had SOLs in science. So now we're lumping them all together.
So, and I was on a Region 4 meeting today, and I asked this question to another gentleman, because obviously our science scores are a concern, and he said, well, Chad, our scores aren't much better than yours right now. And I think that we were talking that through the pandemic, when we had limited time, that we had students that may have been online, and some things were given, and I think on the backside of that, most of the time was given to math, and most of the time was given to English. Not a lot of time was given to science and the history in that part, and that's the truth, and I'm being honest. They gave time to it, but not the equal amount of time. So now I think you're starting to see a little bit of that. So that's the process that we have to look at to help teachers. How do we help remediate students so that when they take this test in 8th grade that they're successful?
Okay, and the other thing I would say, in the paper today, they talked about a public school online for virtual learning, and it's free. I don't know if you read the article. I think it was in one of the 2 papers I read. And this student from Frederick County registered, and he is counted as a enrollee from Smith County, which is in Southwest Virginia, and it's working very well with him. And I didn't know it even existed. But for some students, it was very successful. But I was caught off guard that he's counted in a public school in some other part of Virginia. You might want to read it.
King and Queens.
Miss Shepherd, you know what I'm talking about?
It was Scott County, but yes, I read the article too. Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought that was interesting, whatever. But I know it's a big challenge. But anyway, anyone else? I talked too long.
I'll just say,
got y'all.
before we move on, I'll be interested to see, as far as the impact of the new schedule at at the middle schools, because I know Muhlenberg previously was just the whatever it was before this.
Regular.
Yeah, I want to see what the test scores do, if they increase at all, or will it really do anything? I don't know, but like others have said, being lectured for an extended amount of time would not be productive. So it's good to hear that it's going to be hands-on and group work and different stuff like that, because I know I wouldn't want to sit in there for an hour and a half and just get lectured. So hopefully we'll see an increase in test scores, because it looked like the middle schools were kind of a weak point right now, and start to see those go back up. So I'm glad we're following the data, which I know Ms. Shepherd is a big data person. I am too. And hopefully we can, it's nice being in the 80 whatever on the SOLs, but striving to be number 1 is always great, I think. But looks like we're heading in the right direction. So thank you all.
One of on the ranking and how many school divisions we have in the state. I know how many counties we have.
132.
132. Okay, thank you both.
Which I wanted to say that the largest gap was 108, I believe, between people with us this past year. So that's another. So one was 49th, the last one was in like 108th. So I'm proud of that for our school division, our teachers. They did a really good job.
We all should be. Thank you. All right, going on to an information agenda. Ms. Hodges. Mike.
I'm sorry, Cheryl. I'll stand up close. How's that? Okay. Poor Cheryl. I want to thank all of the administrators and staff who worked so hard together this year in the hiring process. The administrators that have conducted interviews and come up with solutions for the unfilled positions, to the HR staff who coordinated with universities for job fairs. They kept the job postings current online, and they worked to onboard the new employees. And to Jessica Sager for advertising our vacancies through the Google Ads and social media. To finance staff who generated the contracts and updated the payroll system. And to the IT staff who provided the new employees access to our systems. It truly is a great team effort. In years past, the staffing update to the school board has been about staff who were new to SCPS and the staff who left us, and focused on the challenges of hiring the new teachers to fill those vacancies. Tonight, I want to share some additional information with you to help offset those challenges with some positives. So you're used to seeing the teacher turnover data shared during the annual staffing update. This year, I'm sharing our teacher retention rate as well. Retention is the opposite of turnover. The purple represents teacher turnover, and the green represents our retention rate. It's important for us to recognize and celebrate the staff who chose to stay and teach with us another year. I'd also like to point out that our turnover rate of 14% here in SCPS is under the national teacher turnover rate that the National Center for Education Statistics has identified for 2021 as 16%. Here's a list of all the positions that were filled this year, including transfers. I've noted in red positions that have experienced the most turnover that have been very difficult to fill. Within this list, 119 are new to SCPS. As of today, we have 28 unfilled teacher vacancies. We started the year with 7 long-term subs, several who are finishing the requirements to be appointed as a teacher for second semester. Principals have worked to cover the remaining vacancies by assigning additional blocks to existing teachers, increasing class sizes, and providing additional support through the assistance of paraprofessionals. Due to the shortage of school counselors, we also hired 2 counselor interns to assist with providing counseling services. These interns are in a counseling program, and we hope that they'll choose to return to SCPS as a school counselor when their program is complete. Overall, we filled 93 of the 121 vacancies we had. And of course, those include the internal transfers. Several positions will remain unfilled this year due to the lower enrollment numbers. And we also filled 5 administrator vacancies. We currently have 16.5 unfilled positions of the 84.5 support staff positions. The total number of positions filled in the division due to resignations and transfers for both professional and support staff is over 160 positions. This chart shows the experience of teachers who left SCPS grouped by the years of experience. The purple bar on the right represents this past year. Almost 50% of the teachers who left us were our most experienced teachers who had 11 or more years of experience. %60 of our new teachers have 0 to 3 years of experience. We'll continue to provide them with support through our QMET program, which stands for Quality Mentoring for Exceptional Teaching, and they've each been assigned a mentor as well. 21% of the new teachers are more experienced teachers with 11 or more years of experience, but will still need support to learn SCPS practices, procedures, and culture, and to get to know our families and community. So I've shown you the experience we lost and the experience of the new staff we hired. This slide shows the total experience of our teaching staff for the 22-23 school year. Oops. And 66% of those staff have 7 or more years of experience. 11 SCPS graduates are returning as new teachers. Ms. Ashley Fletcher is a new special education teacher at Central High School and former graduate of Central High School. She started at CHS as an assistant basketball coach several years ago. She then came on board 2 years ago as the school secretary and found she wanted more. She felt she could relate to the students easily and wanted to give back and experience the positives with them. She went back to school while working as the school secretary and finished her associate's degree and then her bachelor's degree. She feels comfortable at CHS and enjoys working alongside some of the teachers who were teaching when she was in school. One of Ms. Fletcher's teachers told her back then that she would make a great teacher, and it inspired her. She's hoping to be able to tell him what a difference it made for her. Mr. Ryan Judy is the new auto tech teacher at Triplet Tech and former graduate of Strasburg High School and Triplet Tech. Mr. Judy was working for VDOT when the opportunity to teach at Triplet became available. He liked attending Triplet while he was a student at Strasburg High School and is proud to be teaching in the program that made him successful. He's enjoying the wow factor with his students and feels it's making a difference for them. We had 9 support staff in the division who have become teachers this year. Miss Alyssa Baines Owens is a new special education teacher at Strasburg High School. She started in SCPS as a volleyball coach at Central High School, where she later became a paraprofessional in the library. She transferred to Strasburg High School when she saw an opportunity to work as a paraprofessional in the special education program. She comes from a family of educators and saw her mom become a teacher after working as a paraprofessional in SCPS for several years. She's happy to be working in the school where she graduated from and in the community where she lives. And Miss Jody Foltz is a new first grade teacher at W.W. Robinson Elementary. Ms. Foltz left the healthcare field to become a new teacher. 2 years ago, she came to WW as a paraprofessional and went back to school to become a teacher. She has had a variety of experiences in her role at WW, which have better prepared her for her teaching position. She's now working on her master's degree in elementary education and is thrilled to be working on the first grade team at W.W. Robinson. Here you see the top 4 divisions that our teachers moved to this year, with Rockingham County being the highest at 10%. 10% of the teachers who left us left public education to pursue another career. 20% moved out of the area. To share another perspective, this chart shows where our teachers live who travel from outside of Shenandoah County. So while 10% of the teachers who left us went to Rockingham County, 15% of our staff live in Rockingham County or Harrisonburg and travel here to work. Likewise, 6% of the teachers who left us went to Frederick County, but 8% of the teachers who travel here to work are from the Frederick County, Winchester area. During the exit survey process, the top 3 reasons teachers noted they're leaving were retirement, relocation, or family or personal considerations, such as personal health or caring for a family member with health issues, or to stay home with children. Teachers also mentioned that they're frustrated with the increase in student behaviors. They're feeling outside pressure from parents and the community, particularly on social media. Many of them shared that teachers feel undervalued as professionals. Here are some of the positives that came out of the exit surveys and conversations. Teachers continue to praise the division and all the decisions that are made in the best interest of students. They recognize that students truly are our #1 priority in SCPS. One teacher even stated, SCPS doesn't just teach subjects, they teach kids. They praised division efforts for career readiness for all students. They feel a strong sense of camaraderie and support from their peers within the schools. And they appreciated relevant professional development opportunities. So what can we do? First and foremost, we need to continue to show our staff that they're valued and supported. We're working to address student behaviors through school improvement plans, which include behavior goals. We need to continue to include staff in school and division-wide decision-making. And we need to continue to provide support for teachers through relevant professional development opportunities. And we also need to continue to improve health insurance rates for families. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
I guess in the past, I feel like usually salary or pay would be on one of those three, and it's interesting this time it wasn't. Is behavior usually, I know a lot of those were age or health related, but is behavior usually a factor on why they get frustrated, or is that becoming more of a factor the past few years?
I've heard it here and there, but this year it really was very prevalent in the responses.
Which is not surprising. I mean, we hear it all the time. We talk about it all the time, how important it is to really focus on controlling behavior and, getting some type of respect from kids. And I guess when you feel like you're not getting that, and teachers' hands are so tied these days with not being able to do anything as far as reactions to behavior, it makes sense why it's a frustration for them. So hopefully we can continue to work on that and improve the behavior in the buildings.
Other comments? Thank you. Okay, moving on. Request increase of 23 budget appropriated funds for CDC Public Health. Ms. Stein.
This is becoming kind of regular, so but I enjoy coming up here talking about funding and additional funding that we are getting as a school division. So this just shows the work that some of our administrators are doing to go out and seek the funds that are available for certain things. So the first one that's up is, like you were saying, the clinical support. This is the CDC funds. It's to assist in staffing needs, upgrading technology, purchasing equipment, AED and CPR equipment, as our nurses actually are the trainers for those programs. Are there any particular questions about this? This is ARPA funding. It's under ARPA funding, but it's done through the CDC.
The total amount is $128,000.
$128,000, yes. We've already been awarded $79,000 of it. It was kind of the first funding, and when all that funding wasn't taken by other school divisions, they went back out, and that's when another request was made, so that funding should be coming soon.
Okay, next. Ms. Stein.
I'm just hanging out. Okay, so the next one is the funding from the Universal Service Administration Company. It's the USAC grant funding that we received a good bit last year. It was a total of $399,000, of which we received all but $38,000 last fiscal year. So I just need this, the $38,000 appropriated, and this is for the service of the Wi-Fi on the buses.
Okay. Questions? And 5-4.
Okay, the next one is from the Department of Criminal Justice Services. This is the digital mapping that's going to help promote safety in the schools. It's a GPS kind of thing, so when an emergency arises, there is an exact location
known through the ECC, the Emergency Communication Center, and so this will help with that. It's the use of collaborative response graphics, and it enables better communication during those emergency responses. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Criminal Justice Services for this, and they are funding it in full.
And then 5.5.
Yes, so annually, I get the IT department has a surplus sale, and the funding from this then goes back to purchase other technology needs that haven't been budgeted for or funded. So this year they received $25,231. They do go through a bidding process for this, and this is where they take our obsolete, kind of cycling out surplus of technology equipment that don't have a trade-in value, and they get bidders to bid on it, and this year we ended up with $25,000.
Questions for Angie? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Good. 5.6, Ms. Shepherd, policy JJAC-R.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Proposed revisions to policy JJACR, the concussion procedures, and GCBD-R, staff leaves and absences, are attached to the agenda item as information. Discussion of the policies is slated for the September 22nd work session, and additional information slated for the September 22nd work session. Also, just on the policy that's going to come up a little later, KLB, and we received additional information from the Virginia Department of Education on Friday, September the 2nd, regarding the instructional materials with sexually explicit content, which was shared on Friday. So there are some clarifications, I believe, that we will need to seek, but we, it's the board's pleasure whether we want to approve this policy KLB and then maybe revisit it to include any of the sexually explicit content as necessary. And then also additional information about the library book policy KLB, which is not presented this evening, will be discussed at the September 22nd meeting. At the last work session in August, Dr. Heingardner was tasked to meet with the librarians, and he did. He met with them either last week or the week before last, and he will have information to share with the school board regarding that meeting and maybe some recommendations from that. So that will happen on the September 22nd school board meeting. Be happy to answer any questions about either one of these two policies.
Questions? Comments? Okay, 5.7, the revision of our school board meeting dates in September and in October. Two colleagues would request that the work session begins at 5 p.m. on the 22nd, and on the 27th we have a joint work session with the Board of Supervisors planned for Triplet Tech, including dinner starting at
5:30.
5:30.
And then since, we're talking about the revisions to the calendar, I just want the group to look at the organizational meeting on January 3rd. And does that work for everybody to be at 8:30 in the morning? Or do we need to have that meeting on January the 3rd later in the afternoon?
I can't think that far in advance.
I know.
Depends on what day of the week it is.
It's a Tuesday.
We'll look at that closer to the
No worries.
New Year.
No worries.
Okay, Any other comments about information? All right, action items. Request for reappropriation of the budget of 2022 on lease revenue funds that Ms. Stein presented a while ago. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Colleagues?
I move to approve the request for the reappropriation of the fiscal year 2022 lease revenue funds.
Thank you, Mr. Gutschall. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keller. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. The motion passed by a 6-0 vote. I read my notes, Cheryl. All right, going on to 6-2, revision request of the school board meeting dates. We do have to vote on that. I assume so we do. We heard the discussion. Motion made to make the adjustments as discussed. Moving the 22nd, September 22nd to 5 p.m. to accommodate Ms. Rutz and Mr. Gutschall, and the work session on the 27th with the joint work session with the Board of Supervisors at 5:30 at Triplet Tech, including dinner, I might add. Motion to approve that.
I move that we approve the updated 2022 school board meeting dates as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second of Mr. Mr. Barlow. Discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, 6-3.
Mr. Helsley?
Yes,
May I
ma'am.
ask a question? Before we get to 6-3, would it be possible to separate KLB out from the other two policies so we can go ahead and approve the other two policies and then have a good discussion on KLB? Can we make a motion first to approve the other two and then talk about KLB separately?
Comments? Sounds like a good alternative. Ms. Walsh, do I hear a motion to approve the two that she shared?
I'll make it. I move that we approve policy regulation GAR and policy IFRL as presented.
Motion made by Ms. Walsh to approve GAR and IF. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barlow. Discussion. Roll call vote.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Rutz?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Helsley?
Yes. Passes by 6-0 vote. Okay, now we will focus on policy KLB.
So we need a separate motion for KLB.
Oh, yeah. Do I hear a motion to approve KLB as discussed in our work session?
I move that we accept the public review of learning resources policy that we discussed.
Motion by Mr. Barlow to approve KLB. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Rutz. Discussion.
So the reason I wanted to do it separately is because I have thought of some more questions since our last meeting, and some that I even forgot to ask Ms. Shepherd last time I saw her. Were you able to contact our legal?
Yes.
And they were okay with it?
Yes. He said the policy was fine. He said the verbiage was maybe a little, he didn't use the word, there was extra words in the policy that could have been stricken, but he was fine with the content of the policy.
Okay, thank you for checking.
Mhm.
And then this was a question that came from a citizen, but I had it as well. How is the SCPS Parent and Citizen Committee chosen? Is that a superintendent's?
Mhm.
And how are they?
The way the policy is written now, it would be a superintendent's appointment of the committee. So for the, let me look at the two classroom teachers, the two parents, and the two subject matter experts.
Well, no, I'm talking about under the review committee number 5.
Mhm.
It includes those parents. Selection being based on recommendations from the SCPS Parent and Citizen Committee. Who's on the Parent and Citizen Committee is my question. Who's recommending those two parents? Who is on the Parent and Citizen Committee?
So that's a group that we are forming now, that each of the school board members were asked for a couple of representatives, and our first meeting should be sometime in the next, end of September, beginning of October. But it's not been completely formed at this time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My third question. Does this policy apply to dual enrolled content?
So it would apply to dual enrolled content, and Mr. Hensley can correct me if I'm wrong, but we are allowed for any of our content that is taught through Laurel Ridge Community College, we use their materials, but with our discretion, permission.
Okay. And then what about GovSchool? Have we talked to the other member divisions of GovSchool about this change in policy?
So we have not, but I believe in our memorandum of understanding, this does, our policies do regulate Governor School.
Right, I know it's, our house, our rules typically for things like that, but I just worry a little bit about that and the other members of the GovSchool community. I honestly think we need to postpone this until we can look at the new model policy and see if we can put them together in some way. That's my view.
Other comments? Dennis?
Yeah, I think we need to press ahead. I think that this is something that came to us as a policy suggestion several months ago, and as an effort now, we should push it through. It contains, I think, a very studied and robust way ahead. To pass it now would provide us, I think, with the model, if you will, with a procedure that can be tweaked if and when there are any policy changes required. But in the meantime, it fills a void that we need for transparency, for accessibility in the community, for parents and others in the community to be able to have access to a process by which they're involved in reviewing materials. I think if anything has struck me tonight in the last few meetings, it is the sense of community that supports the school system. We see it every time we meet, and I think that the kind of accessibility and transparency that is in this particular policy is laudable in that it allows stakeholders to request review of instructional materials, that it allows classroom teachers to, from a roster, to be able to make their feelings felt. As a teacher, I felt it was important, professionally edifying for me to be able to make a comment about what I felt about the materials we were using and the curriculum. It allows parents who are not division employees to be able to make comments, and those be selected, as was mentioned, by a group which would be under the selection process determined by Shenandoah County Public Schools with input from the school board members. And it further allows for subject matter experts to be able to weigh in on subjects so that we have some validation from materials that are be taught by people who are experts in the field, whether they be professors, whether they be medical, legal, business leaders, but people who are leaders in the field in our area. And so having such a group who would review would be important. It also, this particular policy allows for this, for the person who wants to have the material reviewed to be able to be part of the group so that they don't lose touch with it and are able to make input. It also holds them responsible for for participating, so that they have to stand for what they believe, and they have to bring the material in question front and center. I think that it allows for 3 levels that we'd be happy with. One is for when parents or stakeholders have a question, they're able to bring it to the local school and have a dialogue with the principal and the teacher involved. I think that would clarify many of the problems that parents have with materials. If it does go beyond that, and it goes to this committee, which groups people from across the community together, it gives us quite a bit of information, so that when the recommendation is made from the group and goes to the superintendent, there is a body of knowledge that goes with it that made up a decision as to why the instructional material was either would be recommended to be deleted from the curriculum, or that it stays within the curriculum. I can't think of any reason that we wouldn't want to allow this kind of community access, this kind of participation. One of the things I like about this is that it allows our senior staff to be able to manage this committee in such a way that it would be independently and what we hope would be objectively formed, and that its recommendations would then go to the superintendent for implementation. In case of any ties or further clarifications, it would go to the school board. Seems to me we have made provision here for review from top to bottom, for inclusion of every stakeholder group in the county, and yet with short time fuses in between each one that would allow for people to participate. As an ex-teacher, I think I would find it an honor to be nominated to such a short-term committee to make input. I think subject matter experts from the communities and universities nearby would feel honored to participate in joining with our school system in reviewing these. And I don't see this as being anything other than an accessible, transparent model that allows our citizens to more fully engage with us and for us to engage with them. So I think we should drive on and pass it. I do think, as with any law, with any other higher policy that comes down, it can be revisited, which can and could be. But in the meantime, there's a gap. We have been given a prior Blivet before this one came along and superseded it, that was not quite as good. And so I think we have a good model in front of us, which can be and could be easily modified in the future. So I think rather than having a gap we should charge ahead, take this as a model that we pass here and now.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes. I'm trying to understand it better in that this policy deals with both textbooks and library books.
No.
No.
Just
So we're not talking about library books right now.
Correct. And I'm sorry if I may. No, I'm really glad you brought it up, because I think at our work session, we did kind of conflate those at certain points. So I appreciate your bringing it up. And we made kind of a specific, what was a decision, seemed like a consensus at the point, along with the superintendent, that it would be one policy, but two different aspects of it. So one policy would be for instructional materials only, and the other, which I understand we will be discussing at the work session next time, will be devoted to the library material selection.
So that's another day. Okay. The one thing, I think the subject matter experts, that might be hard to fill, but I think a committee approach to seeing if this is okay, if what we're doing is okay, there's, certainly some validity to that.
I worry a little bit about, we talk about parental rights a lot. Is having a community member who does not have children or custodial grandchildren in the school system usurping parental rights? I didn't want to say anything about that before, because then it'll get reported that I don't want the taxpayers involved in this, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if a parent or a student or a staff member does not have an issue with the learning material that's being presented, why can somebody from outside of the school learning community bring this for review?
I think it goes back to the same discussion we had a couple months ago about the name change. This board was bound and determined that taxpayers and everybody that crossed through the county line should have a say in the name change. So now what we're saying is that isn't true. If you're not in the school system, you're not a stakeholder. I think that's something we want to be very careful of. We all pay taxes. We all may have grandchildren that enter this, at some point. We're looking at what this does to the future of our academics here. So, I understand. I understand that thought process, but I'm not so sure. And, again, even with the library books, I get questions from people, and discussions from people that don't have people in the system. I get it. However, they're considered stakeholders, in my opinion. If we're going to use it for one thing, we can't change it at a different point. To your point, the policy came about prior to SB 656. All we had done initially was want to change the verbiage so where it didn't use the word complainant. Like, we wanted to be inclusive of the parents that are bringing this forward. I don't think that that's changed just because 656 has come out. I think we should be ahead of the curve. 656, when we get direction from the state, very well they're model policies. There's certain amount of it we have to take, and then there's certain amount of it that we have some leeway as far as our policies go here. So as long as we're within those guidelines and our legal counselor says, hey, yes, you're good, I would rather have something in place and then revisit. I think it's proactive. And it's something like Dennis has said, that, you know, transparency, parental rights, transparency, is something that should be always put on the forefront of what we do.
But parental rights should be at the top, I believe. That, so if there isn't a parent who wants the learning material removed, but there's a citizen from the community who thinks it needs to be looked at.
But they have to go through the same process.
Right.
It's not going to be like they get to come in and say, hey, you take this out. They're going to have to go through the whole committee approach, review, and I would hope that if it's not a valid concern, that it would not be granted.
That it wouldn't get past the principal. Right. Yeah. I guess the other thing is we have a policy and it has worked. We have had books removed. We have had students given alternative assignments. So I think it's a lot of words, and I think it's a lot of people, and I think it's going to take a lot of time to get that many people together to do a review.
Dennis?
Yeah, it will take a little bit of time. It will take some people to get together. The senior staff here has indicated to me that the staff is capable of doing it. I think that it's an important principle of transparency and accessibility for not only parents, which are a large part of what this is, but also for other stakeholders. I don't have a child in the system, but I have a stake in the system that I spent 29 years in uniform supporting. I love this country. I love this county now. That doesn't make me less of a citizen or have less voice. You may have a child in school for 2 or 3 years and then they're gone. Okay, just because you have a student in the school now doesn't make you a more superior citizen with greater input or make you a usurper. I think it makes one interested in what's happening in our community. And that's why I stress this is about a community effort and how the community sees it. I see this, I would like to see as many parents as possible on this. And they are the most immediately concerned, but they're not the only ones concerned. And we all have a stake in where our kids go, whether they're our kids or we teach our kids, or whether they're just the kids we root for. They're all part of us, part of what makes us tick. So, you know, if it weren't a system that had a way of selecting people from various fields, study areas, we didn't have the senior committee doing this, we didn't have the school board to back it up, I might be concerned. But right now I think with the concerns that our society has had recently about the school system and where it's going and what's in the libraries and what are we teaching. By the way, I did want to say one final thing. The best question I had asked me all day was, why? Is there something in the system that you don't like? And the answer to me is no. Thank God. I don't think there's anything, a particular piece of instructional material that I would throw out. It's not because I see anything wrong that I want to support this. It's because I think we ought to have a policy that allows for accessibility of our parents and stakeholders and taxpayers and citizens to have access and the ability to review these things. And my prediction is that when there's a system like this in place, we'll actually see the number of concerns going down, because I think we'll indicate to the citizenry that if you want to make a recommendation for review, you can do that. It's open to you. Come forth. And then there's a process that would follow it up. So I don't think we're taking much of a chance here, but I do agree that bureaucratically it's going to take a little work, but I think it pays off in terms of trust and in terms of accessibility.
Ms. Shepherd, when we are required to, when we adopt material, to have the public look at it for review. We do it all the time, correct?
Like textbooks, yes.
Right. So, you know, when we publish that, when we advertise that, it is never just to parents of the school system. It is to the public. I believe when we did it just a couple months ago, the 1 review or 2 reviews that we did have were of folks that weren't, you know, would not be defined as parents. They probably, I know Marcia Schruntz was one that had given it on the review at Strasburg. So, Board of Supervisors, parents, children, or if they're not, I mean, there's a lot more at stake. We don't separate that when we ask for a review of textbooks, curriculum. That's just not what we do. I don't think that separating them here now would probably be appropriate either.
Anything else? Well, in the Harrisonburg paper, one day this week or last week, headline was Judge tosses suit that tried to deem books obscene for kids. And it's amazing, it was one of the books that Brandy read excerpts at our work session. And as Cindy mentioned about our system is working now, I don't see the need for it, personally, for library books. And we got an email from a librarian, and this struck me, and he said, the last week while I was on bus duty, I heard a shout from a bus full of high schoolers. A familiar face popped out of the window, a former student who lived on the edges in and out of school, and said, "Guess what, Mr. Wilburn? I'm taking dual enrollment classes. I think I might want to be a surgeon." What that tells me that librarian knew what was in his library. He knew his students, and if a book can challenge a student and goes beyond the call of duty, we do not know what that might do to an individual student. So that's where I stand on this.
Might I just, this doesn't have to do with library books, though curriculum, I mean, this is about curriculum, but we do have legislation coming down that we will have to deal with. So whether we do this today or we do this once that's the question. We're going to have to address it. It has come down from legislation that we have to have parental review. So, like I said, we could either do this now or if you would like to wait, but it's not that we can't have a policy. I don't think.
We already have a policy, correct?
We do. And I guess what I would, and I don't have to do it right this minute, but what I would like to do is make a subsidiary motion that we postpone action on this until we have had a chance to parse it with SB 656 and have further discussion on this. One other thing that I didn't mention that worries me a little bit about this policy is that we're worried about teachers, and we're worried about teachers leaving. And by the time learning material gets to the classroom, it has been through so many levels of scrutiny. And are we disrespecting those teachers who have brought that learning material to their principal, who the school board office has looked at it? Are we disrespecting our professional teachers by second guessing them in this way when we already have a nice review process that works?
What is our review process?
It's right here. You have it. It's the former KLB. Do you want me to read it?
It's what's lined through on that policy.
It was handouts at the work session. The committee includes the principal, the librarian.
A talk with persons that may be knowledgeable about the material in question, a discuss of the material, notify the complainant of its decisions, file a recommendation with the committee, with the principal, the superintendent, and the superintendent's designee. So I guess my question is,
I don't think that's, is that what?
that's H or G?
Okay, got it.
So, I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman. So, I'd like to ask the superintendent, when we were presented the policy, what was it, 2 months ago, it was not the stricken one. It was another, even larger one. Can you tell us what the genesis of that was?
Yeah, so if, it's been a while, if I remember correctly, it was to make the process a little more transparent. And with this, the process that we currently have, the policy that we currently have, the complainant may appeal the decision to the superintendent's designee, and to the school board. There was no real direct process for that. So, so it was to make it a little more apparent as to what,
And do you know
what the process would
who
be.
developed that
Yeah.
straw man for us?
Yeah, so I believe it was our assistant superintendent for instruction at the time, Gabby Ryman.
So that was the basis of what we have before us today. Now, it was modified by several of us and by your staff. And so it was a response that we all considered or saw 2 months ago. And so this shorter one, which is still in effect, was to be replaced by that one. The one that we see in front of us today is the latest modified version, edited version of the one that apparently Gabby Ryman produced and has been further modified.
Do you know why, Gabby? Was she asked to do that, or did she anticipate something coming, or?
I think she anticipated something, and it was to clarify the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, that was my point of order. I would like to claim the ability to speak finally, so if others want to speak, I do want to conclude.
Right, let me just throw this out. I don't believe that there's anything in any textbook that any teacher in Shenandoah County is teaching that's inappropriate. Now, I might be wrong, but I just can't imagine that the textbook has anything that should not be included in that. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is and say, if you want to have a committee that is going to see this and do this, then have at it. But I don't think you're going to find anything. I don't think you're going to find stuff that's going to be so outlandish and questionable that it doesn't pass or is not acceptable. I think the thing that we've got to keep in mind here is that in our current environment, I think it's important that we make every effort to be transparent, every effort to include anybody that wants to be part of the process. Okay? I think that's going to go a long way to help restore some faith in education. And I'm not talking just here, I'm talking nationally. Consequently, I don't really have a problem with that. Now, when we start talking about library books, I do think that it's important that you include the librarian, the media specialist in that, more so than any expert out there. But that's another topic. So, we can argue about, the whole thing here with granted, we do have a policy in place. But if you feel like that the policy that you guys are coming up with is a better tool in order to address concerns that we might have, and just to be able to show, hey, we're not hiding a thing here, then I'm all for it.
Dennis, your request to speak last, I'm going to overrule. Someone gave me advice on the name change, and the chairperson should go last. So if you want to add anything?
Mr. Chair, that's not the standard for parliamentary procedure. The person who made the motion is
Well,
usually given the courtesy.
Go ahead, I'll allow it.
So I want to, first of all, echo what I said before and what Andrew just said, which is, this is not an indictment of Shenandoah County Public Schools. It's a vote of confidence in Shenandoah County Public Schools. I don't know of anything that should be taken out of curricula anywhere, and I'm not suggesting that there is. But I would like to tell all of our stakeholders, you have a voice in being able to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not sure about that. I'd like to have that reviewed. The one visit to a principal may obviate the problems that that person has, or it may bring to the surface something that people haven't seen. I taught for 14 years. I saw many discrepancies in books that I taught with. I taught from books that I didn't like. I taught from books that I was forced to use as a teacher. So as a teacher, I'm not absolute in what I'm given to teach. So there are problems. There is a concern about there, and we've lost students to homeschooling, et cetera, who are worried about CRT and 1619 project and things like that. They would like to know that if there's something that smells like that, they would like to be able to perk up and say something about it and have some access to it. I asked the superintendent how many of these we had the last couple of years, 2 or 3. I don't think we're going to be inundated. We'll probably have even less when the students and the stakeholders feel, the taxpayers, the stakeholders and the parents feel empowered to be able to participate in the process. So I see this as a way of opening the door to that community that is supporting our school system and is part of our school system. And I fully agree with Andrew. I think this is something, it is not only not designed to hurt us, it's designed to make us just a little bit more healthy at looking at the access that each of our spheres has. And this is, in no way should this be seen as a vote against our teachers. If I were teaching as I was back in the day, I would be honored to serve on such a committee and to be able to give my professional opinion about the use of a book or material. I think that was a good thing to do. I would think a Blue Ribbon panel member would like to have access to Shenandoah County school system and actually speak to these things if it becomes an issue. And if it doesn't, then we have a really good way of saying to the world, we're open, transparent, above board, and we're ready to hear your concerns. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Roll call vote?
Ms. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Rutz?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Helsley?
No. Motion pass, 4-2. Moving on to 6-4. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel as presented to us earlier this evening?
I move to approve the personnel as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Gutschall to approve the personnel. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Ritz. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Rutz?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Helsley?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Superintendent's monthly reports. Ms. Shepherd, you have anything to add on the reports?
I do not, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, hearing none. I see the attendance was running about what it was last year at the low 90s.
Yes, we're hoping that it increases to the high 90s here soon.
Okay, finishing up, board member comments. Who would like to go first? Mr. Keller?
Pass.
Ms. Ritz?
Pass.
I'll just say real quickly, I think we need to discuss the possibility of looking at the school calendar for next year, and I know it was already approved for the next few years. Heard a lot of concerns with relation to the Shenandoah County Fair. So it's something that has to be looked at relatively soon, since people need to plan based off the calendar. Not sure if we can maybe run a survey of some sort or have input collected just to kind of get an idea of where we're at with the fair schedule and the school schedule. But I did hear a fair number of concerns while I was at the fair and then other places as well in the previous couple of weeks. So I think that's something that we should probably at least think of taking a look at here soon, just to make sure it's not easy the way it's structured, clearly, but something I'd like to take a look at.
Okay. Ms. Walsh?
I want to thank all the staff, the teachers, the principals, everybody who got us off on such a great start this year. You guys worked all summer. We've already thanked you for your hard work this summer, but I really appreciate the staff in the schools who are there every day with our kiddos, and I've been struck by the number of extra things that our staff do for our students that are not in their job description, whether it's the athletic director or a teacher. The way they go out of their way for our kids is really special, and I really appreciate them for that. The other thing is a little bit more along the lines of our board and how we operate. I know we haven't spent a whole lot of time on board norms. We spent a lot of time last session putting those together because board's governed by consensus. And I just hope that we can maybe look at those, maybe revise them, but just keep in mind that the board operates by consensus. And then the only other thing that I would ask, and I said this in a meeting, Mr. Helsley and Ms. Shepherd, is in my time, there was no transition for the new chair and vice chair, whereas, in the previous 20 years, there was a little bit of, somebody had been there, somebody had been in the room, and then a new person was in the room. So there was a little bit of continuity. So there are just some things that are different this time. And one of those is, in 6.5 years on the board, there was never a policy put for information that we didn't first talk about or didn't come from VDOE or VSBA as a result of legislation. So I think I would be in a better place now on this policy had I known in June, although I couldn't find it on the June agenda, had I known that was locally initiated, because I think we probably should have had consensus from the board before we asked our staff to do that work. Now, if it's something that Ms. Shepherd is initiating, then I'd also like to know that, because she does that sometimes when there has to be a revision to a regulation or something like that. I would hope that the full board would know where that came from, if it wasn't from something we had discussed here in board member comments or something that had come from Virginia that we had to do.
Mr. Barlow?
Well, I was going to pass, but I'm not going to pass now. I mean, we were faced with the board with about, I'm not sure, 26, 27 policy items that we were supposed to take a look at, to review as a group of 6. We realized, we said, that's a lot of material for us to digest. I'm not sure if it came to us in June or before that, but we had a lot to digest. And I went through those, we all had those, they were scrolled on that screen, and we all took a look at them. Okay, I went home, took a look at them, I had a problem with a few, and came back with some comments, because we weren't gonna pass them. I thought we all did that.
KLB wasn't on that list.
It was.
Was it?
It was.
It must have been added later.
It wasn't added, it was like number 26, 25, whatever, it was there.
It was on the last pages.
Okay, so enough. So, and as a matter of fact, as the superintendent will verify, I actually said to her and Dr. Heingartner that exactly as you just said, Cindy, that, you know, having to digest 26, 27 of these in a month is maybe unreasonable. We should have a little bit more time. And we talked about having maybe a 3-month process. We did discuss all that in our work session, and I'm glad we're doing the work sessions now. But in the work session, we talked about that very issue. And we talked about how the fact that this probably needs, a policy issue like this needs like a 3-month window, or at least a 3-meeting window by which we can address these. So I'm not sure what kind of, transition, could have obviated this, but I think it did clear out something that Brandy and Brandy especially highlighted at the last meeting, which is, I mean, our keystone job here is to develop policy. And if it means that we have to take these into smaller bite-sized chunks, or that the policy committee has to do a little bit more groundwork in bringing them back, then we need to do that. But what we had this issue before for 3 months, we've been discussing it and talking about it. So
I think that what was different in the past is if the policy committee made any changes to policy, they would have let us know that when it came up for information.
I'm sorry, if they did what?
If they made any changes to a policy that was not sent to us the way that I said before, through legislation or something that we discussed here, the policy committee would let us know that in public. So
Okay,
everybody
I think,
would know.
I will disagree with that, but what I think we ought to do is have that discussion at our work session, because I believe that was done. And I believe it didn't incur much discussion. But I do think that I would agree fully that the policy committee probably has to do a little bit more spade work, report back. But I will say that that particular policy blivet was presented to us. And I made certain comments, maybe others did too, about it. And then based on that, the staff came back with something else, and we had another straw man. And anybody here could have done that, and that's why we talked about it during the work session. So.
Well, for me, it wasn't until the work session that I was made aware of what the process had been on that.
Well, I'm the newbie, so there you go.
Well, am I incorrect in saying, and Cindy, you said, 8.5 years, when it comes.
6.5.
6.5 years, when it comes from the VDOE, there is citations for that, and if it comes from a VSBA, anything internal, according to Dr. Heingartner, will say SCPS, and it's at the top, and they're all brought that way. Correct. It was in a whole list. I think I had asked about several one-word changes. It was nothing. The policy committee has only met one time in 8 months, so this was something that has come down from administration, who asked them to update this. I have no idea. I don't know where that came from, just for clarity. So, yeah, we were concerned about the verbiage of it initially, and we just kind of made it a little bit more succinct in the process. I mean, the policy hasn't changed a great deal. It's and it didn't come from us, so it was initiated in-house.
Okay. Just going forward, if we could have more of a conversation about that. When Michelle and I wanted to update the triplet policy to include homeschool kids and private school kids being allowed to attend triplet, before we asked staff to do work, we brought it up with the board, and we either got consensus or didn't get any objection. And I would just ask that if there's something that's coming up that's out of the norm, and this is for Ms. Shepherd too, because I said it to her the other day, if there's something coming up that is sort of not the typical way we receive these updates, I'd just like a heads up. It's not, and I'm just saying going forward, we're done with this one, but just going forward, if we could do that.
You are aware that you had that document at the working session, right?
Yes, I am, but I did not know where it was initiated, who had written it until the work session.
I think blindly it would have been, if we wouldn't have brought anything up, we would have adopted it as it stood probably 2 months ago. Just as a policy update, we would have gone through and we would have just gone yes, and that's where it would have stood.
Well, I will admit, I don't always read the policies that carefully when they're for information. I tend to read them about 2 weeks before we vote on them. And our work session was about 2 weeks before we voted on them. So all I'm asking is just a heads up in the future.
Okay, I only got a few things. It's getting late. I was huge, and I know the whole community in the county was disappointed the Virginia High School League refused to grant Mountain View High School their appeal to remain Group 1 by a 5-0 vote. And I was down at Mountain View and before the meeting, and Mr. Cubbage was kind of thought they had it, and it was, I don't understand it. I mean, they were 7 over. They had a class that should not be included for athletic purposes, and they denied it. And I forgot, Mr. Dorman was here. Are they going to appeal it to the executive committee?
They have.
They already have. Okay. Well, that's good. And then the final thing I want to say is I want to thank the central office staff for helping feed our students since we opened up. The cafeterias were short of help, and you all did a duty, and Ms. Shepherd was the leader, and I went down to Mountain View, and it just shows you about the staff and the commitment to our student body. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:28. Dennis, I like to see that in Robert's Rules of Order because my source said the chairman always speaks last. Just show me. I will. Okay.
Mr. Helsley,